So, I never thought I'd be one of those people who write long Reddit posts about their personal disasters, but here we are. I'm 35, male, and I've been married for 6 years. I run a small import business, not glamorous, but it pays the bills and lets me sleep at night. My wife, Anna, works in marketing, and until a few months ago, I thought we were doing okay. Not perfect, but stable. Then things started to shift. Subtly, at first. She'd come home later, saying she had strategy meetings or brand brainstorming dinners. She started dressing sharper, not for me, not for work, her office is casual, but for someone else, or something else. The perfume changed too. I noticed it because she used to smell like vanilla and citrus, and suddenly it was sandalwood and something spicy. I ignored it for a while, told myself I was being paranoid. But you know that gut feeling? The one that hums like background noise until it gets too loud to ignore? Yeah, that one started screaming. The real turning point came one night when she left her laptop open. She was in the shower, and I wasn't even snooping, I swear. I just walked by and saw a message pop up on her screen. It said, "You inspire me, even when you don't know it." The sender's name? JM. Now, I know this is going to sound ridiculous, but my first thought was, Jack Ma? Like the Alibaba guy? It was a running joke between us because I used to watch his motivational videos when my business was struggling. Anna always teased me about it, said I had a man crush on China's richest philosopher. But the joke stopped being funny when I clicked the chat. It wasn't Jack Ma. It was her boss. James Martin. JM. And their messages went way beyond inspiration. I just stood there, frozen, staring at the screen while the shower kept running. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. That was the night my life split into before and after. I didn't sleep that night. I lay there beside her, staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathe like nothing had happened. You know that feeling when your body's frozen, but your brain won't stop screaming? That was me. I kept replaying those messages over and over. Words like inspire, connection, and our future, and I didn't need a PhD in heartbreak to figure out what they meant. The next morning, I made coffee for both of us, like I always did. She came out of the bedroom wrapped in a towel, humming, scrolling on her phone. I asked, as casually as I could, "So, who's JM?" Her face froze mid-scroll. She blinked, once, twice, and then smiled, that fake, PR smile she uses when she's lying at work. "Oh, that's James. My boss. We're working on a campaign." "Why?" I didn't answer right away. I just handed her the coffee and said, "You mean the campaign where he tells you that you inspire him?" Her smile faltered. I saw it, that tiny crack in her mask. She tried to recover, saying, "Oh my God, are you checking my messages now?" "It's just harmless banter, Jack." He's like that with everyone. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But I'd seen the rest of the chat. I'd seen her write, "I wish I could see you without worrying who might notice." I told her that. Out loud. She went pale. Then angry. "You had no right to look at my private messages," she snapped. And that's when I lost it. I slammed my hand on the counter and shouted, "You had no right to cheat on me." She flinched. Tears filled her eyes instantly, not guilt, not sorrow, but self-pity. She started spinning this story about how I'd been distant, how she felt unappreciated, how James understood her ambitions. Ambitions. That word still makes me sick. I asked her point blank if she slept with him. She didn't answer, just turned away and said, "Does it matter anymore?" That's when I knew. That's when the marriage, the business trips, the 6 years of inside jokes, all of it, started to dissolve like smoke. I didn't yell after that. I just stood there, looking at her back, feeling something hollow out inside me. When she finally turned around, I think she expected me to argue, to beg, to do something dramatic. But I didn't. I just said, "Pack a bag. You can stay with your mom for a while." She started crying again, this time harder, like I'd suddenly become the villain in her story. She said she'd made a mistake, that she didn't want to lose everything over one moment of weakness. But the thing is, it wasn't one moment. The messages went back months. There were hotel receipts too, hidden in her email drafts, like she thought that made them invisible. When she realized I'd seen everything, she got quiet. I could tell she was calculating, not how to fix things, but how to control the fallout. That's who Anna is. She doesn't panic, she strategizes. I went to my office that day and just sat there staring at the walls. I didn't even open my laptop. My employees probably thought I was sick. And in a way, I was, not physically, but spiritually. That evening, I called my dad. Now, my dad's an old-school man, the kind who believes a handshake is a contract and marriage is sacred. I expected disappointment. But instead, he sighed and said something that hit me right in the chest. "Son, sometimes love ends quietly, not with a scream, but with a truth you can't unsee." That night, I made my decision. No drama, no social media, no begging. Just clarity. I filed for divorce the next morning. She didn't even fight it. Not really. She just asked for the clean break. So that's what I gave her, half the assets, half the savings, half the furniture. But she couldn't take the one thing I still had left, my peace. Or at least, that's what I told myself. But in the weeks that followed, peace didn't come. What came instead was emptiness. And something strange, a video recommendation that would change the way I saw everything. It was titled, Jack Ma. Why Rejection is the Best Teacher. So there I was, sitting in my half-empty apartment, eating instant noodles out of a paper bowl, and YouTube autoplay decided to throw me a curveball. A Jack Ma interview. Normally, I would have skipped it. But the title caught me. If you've never been rejected, you've never tried hard enough. At that point, I had nothing left to lose, so I watched. It was the one where Jack Ma talks about applying for 30 different jobs and getting rejected by all of them, even KFC. Everyone laughs when he tells that story, but that night, it hit me differently. He said something like, "Rejection is not the end. It's your teacher. If people reject you, learn from it. Don't complain. Don't give up." And I swear, it felt like he was talking directly to me, and not as some billionaire giving a speech, but as a guy who'd been kicked around and refused to stay down. I remember pausing the video and just staring at my reflection on the screen. I looked exhausted, not just from the divorce, but from trying to be everything for everyone. For Anna. For my business. For appearances. That night, I made a promise to myself. I'd stop trying to win at relationships, at business, at life. I'd just learn. So I started rebuilding. Slowly. I took long walks in the evening. I called old friends I hadn't spoken to in years. I went to the gym again, even if I could barely focus. I started journaling, which sounds cheesy, I know, but it helped. And every night before bed, I'd watch one motivational clip. Jack Ma, Steve Jobs, Jocko Willink, didn't matter. I needed something, someone, to keep me grounded. Funny enough, Jack Ma became kind of a ghost mentor to me. Whenever I hit a wall, I'd hear his voice saying, "If you complain, nobody will help you. If you move, everything changes." That became my new mantra. But just as I started to heal, life threw me one last test, the kind you don't see coming until it's staring right in your face. About 3 months after the divorce papers were finalized, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer. I'd been getting spam calls about extended car warranties and fake investment pitches, but something made me swipe anyway. Hello? There was silence for a second, then a shaky breath. Jack, it's me. Anna. I didn't say anything. Just sat there, phone pressed to my ear, heart thumping. Her voice sounded different, softer, nervous, like someone trying to walk barefoot across broken glass. She said she didn't want to stir things up, but she'd been meaning to apologize properly. That things with James had fallen apart. That she'd left her job. That she'd realized too late what she'd lost. I wanted to hang up. I should have hung up. But I didn't. Because even after everything, hearing her cry made something inside me ache. She said she'd been in therapy. That she was trying to understand why she sabotaged something good. That maybe we could meet for coffee, just to talk, not to get back together, but to find closure. Closure. That word. It's like emotional bait for people who still have wounds open. I told her I'd think about it. That night, I watched another Jack Ma clip. It was one where he said, when people leave you, it's because your destiny is not in the same book. Don't chase the pages that were never yours. It hit me so hard I had to pause the video. I realized I didn't need closure. What I needed was distance. Healing. Direction. So the next day, I texted her. I hope you find peace, Anna. But I'm moving on. Please don't contact me again. I thought that would be the end of it. But a week later, I got another call, not from her, but from someone I never expected to hear from. Her boss. James Martin. And what he told me changed everything I thought I knew about that whole mess. When I saw his name flash on my screen, my first instinct was to laugh, that kind of half-crazy, UVE got to be kidding me laugh. James Martin. The guy who'd blown up my marriage. I almost declined it, but curiosity got the better of me. I answered, and before I could say anything, he spoke in this low, tired voice. Jack, I think I owe you an apology. I didn't say a word. Just waited. He sighed. Look, things with Anna didn't happen the way you probably think. I mean, yes, we crossed lines. But not at first. He explained that it started with late-night project calls and emotional support. The classic slow-burn office affair. But then, things apparently spiraled. She told me you were cold, he said. That you didn't believe in her career, that you were controlling. I wanted to explode. Controlling? The woman had access to my business bank account and half my passwords. I couldn't control what movie we watched, let alone her career. But James kept talking. I know it's no excuse, but I genuinely thought she was leaving you. She made it sound like your marriage was already over. I let out a bitter laugh. And you just happened to be the sympathetic boss who understood her ambitions, right? He didn't argue. Just said quietly, you're right. I was selfish. I used her loneliness to feed my ego. And it backfired. I lost my marriage, too. That's when I found out he'd been married the whole time. 2 kids. His wife found out through emails and kicked him out. He said Anna moved into a rental place, but it didn't last long. Apparently, she'd started drinking, quit her job, and ghosted most of her friends. For a moment, I didn't know what to feel. Anger? Pity? Relief? James said something before hanging up that stuck with me. You know, Jack, you were the better man in all of this. She said it herself. I didn't respond. I just sat there, staring out my window, watching the city lights flicker like dying stars. The truth didn't make me feel better, it just made everything real. And that's when I realized something important: forgiveness wasn't about her anymore. It was about freeing myself from the gravity of what she did. But fate wasn't done testing me yet. Because a few weeks later, Anna came back into my life again, in the most unexpected way possible. It happened on a random Thursday. I was leaving a client meeting at this small cafe downtown, you know the kind: indie music, too many plants, overpriced espresso, when I heard someone call my name. Jack! I turned around, and there she was. Anna. She looked different. Thinner, like life had taken a few bites out of her. Her hair was shorter, darker, her eyes tired but oddly calm. She wasn't wearing makeup, just this plain grey sweater and jeans. For a second, I almost didn't recognize her. She smiled, hesitant. Hey. I didn't expect to run into you here. Neither did I. There was this awkward silence, not the kind filled with anger, but that hollow kind where two people realize they're strangers now. She asked if I had time for a coffee. Against my better judgment, I said yes. We sat down, and it was surreal. She told me she'd been doing better, working part-time at a startup, living with her sister. She mentioned therapy again, how she'd been learning to unpack her patterns. Then she looked at me and said, "You seem peaceful. Happier." And I was. Not completely, but enough. I told her about focusing on my business, about learning Mandarin online because Jack Ma once said, if you understand language, you understand opportunity. She laughed, the same laugh that used to make my chest feel warm. For a moment, it almost felt like old times. Almost. Then she said something that caught me completely off guard. "I saw your company's new website. It looks amazing. You always had that spark, that belief in people. I didn't see it before. I was so focused on what I thought I was missing." Her eyes were glossy when she said it. And then, softly, "Do you think we could ever start over?" I swear, time froze. The cafe noises faded, the world shrank to just her and me and that question hanging in the air like smoke. A few months earlier, I might have said yes. Out of nostalgia, out of loneliness, out of love for who she used to be. But now, I just looked at her and said, "I think we both have to start over, just not together." She nodded slowly. No tears, no begging this time. Just quiet acceptance. She stood up, smiled sadly, and said, "You really did become the man I always wanted you to be." And then she left. That was the last time I saw her in person. Also, I thought. About 2 weeks after that cafe meeting, I was back in my office, buried in invoices and supplier emails, when my phone buzzed. It was from an unknown number again, but this time, it wasn't a call. It was a text. "Jack, this is Anna's sister. I don't know who else to reach out to." My stomach dropped. Those words never mean something good. I called her immediately, and she answered, voice shaking. "Jack. Anna's in the hospital." Everything inside me went cold. Apparently, she'd been struggling more than anyone realized. Depression, drinking, the whole spiral. Her sister found her after she'd collapsed from a mix of exhaustion and something worse. They said it was an overdose of sleeping pills, though not a fatal one, thank God. I remember driving to the hospital, hands gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I didn't even think, I just went. When I got there, she was lying in a hospital bed, pale and hooked up to fours. The sight of her, once so vibrant and ambitious, nearly broke me. She looked at me through half-open eyes and whispered, "You came." And I did. Even after everything, I came. We didn't talk much that day. I just sat beside her, holding her hand, feeling the weight of everything unsaid between us. The doctors said she'd be okay, physically. But mentally, she had a long road ahead. When I left that night, I stood in the parking lot for a long time, staring at the city lights. I thought about all the pain, the betrayal, the lessons, and how fragile we really are beneath the surface. And I remembered something Jack Ma said in one of his interviews. When you're small, you have to be very focused and rely on your brain, not your strength. Life will test you, your reaction defines you. That line stuck with me. Because my reaction, in that moment, wasn't anger. It wasn't bitterness. It was compassion, the one thing I thought she'd burned out of me. I decided to help her, not as a husband, not as a lover, but as someone who once promised to care, even when love had changed shape. But I had no idea how deeply that decision would change me next. Over the next few months, I found myself doing something I never expected, helping Anna heal. Not financially, emotionally. I'd check in, drive her to therapy once a week, sometimes sit with her sister for tea afterward. There was no romance in it. No lingering what if. Just this quiet understanding that two people could still care, even after the fire burned everything else down. She started to look better. Her eyes got brighter. She smiled again, not the fake, Instagram-ready kind, but the kind that comes from remembering how to be human. One day after therapy, she said, "I know you don't owe me this. I know I hurt you more than anyone ever has. But you being here, it's keeping me alive." That hit me hard. Not in a romantic way, but in a real way. Like I was finally seeing the cost of everything we'd both done wrong, her choices, my silence, our pride. For the first time, I stopped seeing her as the woman who betrayed me. I saw her as a person, broken, flawed, scared. Just like me. But life, as always, had one more twist. One morning, I walked into my office and found an email waiting for me. The subject line said, "Invitation to Hangzhou E-commerce Forum." At first, I thought it was spam. But it wasn't. My company had been shortlisted for a small business delegation to China, a trade program encouraging cross-border startups. Sponsored by, of all people, Alibaba Group. I laughed out loud. I actually looked up and said, "You've got to be kidding me." It felt like the universe was saying, "All right, Jack. Let's see if you've really been listening to Jack Ma." So I went. It was my first time outside the country. I landed in Hangzhou with 2 suits, 1 pair of business shoes, and a head full of nerves. The trip changed everything. The culture, the mindset, the humility. It made me realize how small my problems were compared to what people build when they refuse to quit. I met business owners who'd lost everything and started over 10 times. People who saw failure as fertilizer, not a grave. That's when I finally understood what Jack Ma meant when he said, "If you don't give up, you still have a chance. Giving up is the greatest failure." And standing there, halfway across the world, I decided something. I wouldn't be defined by betrayal anymore. I'd be defined by how I rebuilt after it. But then, the day before I flew home, I got one more message, and it was from Anna again. It came as an email, simple subject line. "Before you go home." I opened it while sitting in my hotel room, suitcase half packed, city lights spilling through the window. The message started with, "Jack, I heard you're in China." Somehow, that feels poetic. She said she'd been following my company updates quietly, that she was proud of me, even if she didn't have the right to say so. Then came the part that hit me like a slow punch to the chest. "You once told me Jack Ma said rejection is the best teacher." I didn't understand it then. But now, I do. You were my rejection, Jack. And my teacher. She talked about how she'd started volunteering at a local women's shelter, helping others going through divorce or emotional breakdowns. She said she finally found peace, not by trying to erase what happened, but by facing it head on. I used to think love meant ownership, she wrote. Now I think it means wanting someone to grow, even if that growth takes them away from you. At the end of the letter, she wrote, "Please don't reply. Just know that I'm grateful you once loved me enough to walk away." I read it twice. 3 times. Then just sat there, staring out the window at Hangzhou's skyline, a mix of neon light and reflection on water. It was strange. There was no anger left. No sadness, either. Just this deep, quiet acceptance. She was right, it was poetic. I'd flown halfway around the world chasing business success, and instead found closure in an email that asked for no response. Before I shut my laptop, I opened one last Jack Ma clip. He said something that fit too perfectly. If you want to be successful, learn to endure pain. If you want to be wise, learn to forgive. That night, I finally forgave her, and myself. When I boarded the plane the next morning, I felt lighter than I had in years. Like I'd left all the bitterness somewhere between departure and redemption. But life wasn't done teaching me. Because what happened after I came home turned that sense of peace into something bigger, something like purpose. When I got back home, everything felt different, not just because I'd been to China, but because I had changed. I threw myself into my business like never before. Every client call, every shipment, every late-night invoice felt purposeful. I stopped obsessing over what I lost and started focusing on what I could build. I even started speaking to local small business groups, sharing lessons I'd learned from Jack Ma videos and my own messy journey. People started showing up to my talks, genuinely interested in how someone who'd been burned personally could still rebuild professionally. One afternoon, a young entrepreneur asked me, "How did you deal with betrayal?" I thought about Anna, the emails, the hospital, the letter from China, everything. And I said, "You accept it. You learn from it. And then you focus on yourself. Nothing else matters until you do." The funny part? Through this, I started mentoring others, not because I was some wise guru, but because sharing my story made me feel like the heartbreak I endured had meaning. And slowly, life started giving me small, unexpected wins. My company got a contract with a major supplier I'd been chasing for years. My Mandarin improved enough that I could negotiate with confidence. I even reconnected with friends I drifted away from, forming a network of support I didn't know I needed. Most importantly, I stopped thinking about Anna as the woman who betrayed me. She became a chapter in my story, a painful one, sure, but a chapter that taught me resilience, empathy, and the weirdly satisfying power of letting go. It felt like I was finally stepping into the life I'd been meant to live, one that wasn't dictated by anger, jealousy, or regret. And yet, just when I thought I had everything figured out, life had another surprise waiting, one that involved someone I never expected to meet again. It was a rainy Tuesday evening, and I was walking home from a networking event, soaked but strangely content. My phone buzzed with a notification from LinkedIn, nothing unusual. But this one caught my eye, a connection request from Anna. I froze. My thumb hovered over the accept button. Part of me wanted to ignore it forever. Another part of me wanted to see what she had to say. Curiosity won. I clicked. A message popped up immediately. "Jack, I know this is unexpected. I just wanted to say, I'm genuinely proud of you. And I hope life's treating you well. No pressure to reply. Just thought you should know." That was it. Short. Honest. No guilt, no manipulation, no strings attached. I stared at it for a long time. And then I smiled. Not because I missed her, or because I forgave her, but because I realized how far I'd come. That small message didn't control my emotions anymore. I wasn't her safety net. I wasn't waiting for closure. I was free. I replied, "Thanks, Anna. I hope you're doing well, too." That was all. And in that moment, I felt a strange kind of relief. Like closing a book I'd carried around for years and finally putting it back on the shelf. The next few weeks were quiet. No drama, no surprises, just me, building my business, reconnecting with friends, and living life without constantly measuring myself against past mistakes. But the universe, as always, had one last lesson for me, one that reminded me why I had started all this reflection in the first place. A few months later, I got an unexpected email from the organizers of the Hangzhou Business Forum. They were hosting a virtual session for small business owners worldwide, and they wanted me as a guest speaker. I was stunned. Me, standing in front of a global audience, sharing lessons I'd learned from my own failures, Jack Ma videos, and, yes, heartbreak. I spent weeks preparing, not slides, not fancy charts, just stories. Stories about betrayal, mistakes, learning from rejection, and how rebuilding oneself is more important than revenge. When the session started, I saw faces from all over the world, some nodding, some crying, some laughing at my jokes about my first disastrous attempts at importing goods. At the end, someone asked a question that caught me off guard. "How do you forgive someone who hurt you so deeply?" I paused. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because I wanted to give it the weight it deserved. Forgiveness isn't for them. It's for you. When you forgive, you stop carrying the weight of someone else's choices. You can move forward, build, and become someone you're proud of. And sometimes, life will teach you this the hard way, through betrayal, rejection, or heartbreak. But that's the lesson: you survive. You grow. You thrive. After the session, people reached out with messages I never expected, entrepreneurs who had been cheated, rejected, or abandoned, saying my story gave them hope. And that's when it hit me. The heartbreak, the betrayal, Anna, James, the hospital, the email from China, all of it had led me here. Not just to success in business, but to a deeper understanding of life and human connection. And through it all, I realized I had my own Jack Ma moment, not wealth, not fame, but the kind of resilience that changes a person forever. But just as I started to feel truly grounded, life threw one final, unexpected curveball at me. A few weeks after the virtual session, I got an email from someone I never expected, Jack Ma himself. No joke. The subject line read, "Inspired by your story." At first, I thought it was a scam. But as I read, I realized it wasn't. He had somehow heard about my talk through the forum organizers. He wrote that he admired how I turned personal betrayal into a lesson for others, and that my story reminded him why he started Alibaba, because resilience and learning from failure aren't just business strategies, they're life strategies. He invited me to a private online discussion with him and a handful of other small business owners. It was surreal. Here I was, a guy who'd been blindsided by his wife, almost destroyed by heartbreak, sitting in a Zoom room with the man whose videos had helped me rebuild. During the session, he said something that made the last few years of chaos make sense in a way I hadn't realized. Life will throw betrayal, rejection, and hardship at you. But those who survive, learn, and grow, they are the real winners. Not the rich. Not the famous. The ones who endure and teach others. I thought about Anna, the hospital, the letters, the trips, and the late nights spent rebuilding. I realized I had endured. I had learned. And now I could teach others. And that's when it clicked. All the pain, all the unexpected twists, all the betrayal, it wasn't just my story. It was my preparation for something bigger. I logged off that session feeling empowered, humbled, and oddly grateful for everything I'd gone through. Because without it, I wouldn't have learned the one thing that really mattered. Life isn't about avoiding pain. It's about what you do after the pain finds you. So here I am, back home, running my business, speaking to small business owners, and occasionally checking in on old friends, a life that's calm, productive, and surprisingly fulfilling. Looking back, the divorce, the betrayal, the hospital, the letters from Anna, the trips to China, and even Jack Ma's mentorship, it all feels like one long, messy lesson. A brutal one, yes, but necessary. Here's what I've learned, in case it helps anyone reading this. Betrayal doesn't define you. Yes, someone hurt you deeply, but their actions are a reflection of them, not of your worth. Forgiveness is for you, not them. Holding on to anger is like carrying a backpack full of rocks. Drop it. Move on. Rebuilding takes time. Don't rush. Focus on yourself first: career, hobbies, health, emotional stability. Learning from rejection is powerful. Jack Ma was rejected by dozens of jobs before finding success. Let failure teach you, not break you. Unexpected lessons can come from anywhere. In my case, a billionaire's videos, an ex-wife's emails, and a hospital stay all shaped my resilience. Compassion and empathy don't make you weak. Helping Anna heal, even after she hurt me, reinforced my own growth. Life is messy, unpredictable, and sometimes brutally unfair. But it's also beautiful if you let it teach you, rather than break you. Would I go back and change things? Honestly, no. Every heartbreak, betrayal, and rejection brought me here, to a life I never expected, with strength I didn't know I had. So to anyone struggling right now, survive. Learn. Grow. And remember that sometimes the most unexpected teachers, even someone like Jack Ma, can show up in your life exactly when you need them. And yeah, life might surprise you in ways you'd never believe.